There is a cashier at a grocery store near where I grew up, and she has a look. Not a mean look, not a kind look, just a look that lands somewhere in the middle. The kind of glance that scans you the same way it scans the barcode on a cereal box. Neutral. Automatic. She does not see you. She sees a transaction. And most of us, for most of our lives, are transactions to almost every system, institution, and stranger we walk through. What nobody prepares you for is the moment that starts to change and the strange, slightly uncomfortable feeling that comes with it. My name is Daniel, and I've spent more time than I should admit watching the way wealth quietly reshapes how the world responds to a person. Not just the big dramatic moments, but the small ones. The tone shifts, the offers that suddenly appear in your inbox, the conversations that start going differently. And today, I want to map that out honestly, because most people either don't believe it's real or they believe it and spend their entire lives chasing it for the wrong reasons. Let's start somewhere uncomfortable. Most people carry a number in their head, an imaginary finish line that they have never actually calculated. They just feel like they're behind it, and that feeling is by design. The financial industry, the media, the comparison machine of social media, they all profit from your vague sense of inadequacy. So before we talk about the levels, I want to say this clearly. The shifts I'm about to describe are real, but they are not the point. They're a map, and a map only helps you if you know where you actually want to go. The first shift happens earlier than people expect, and it has almost nothing to do with how others treat you. It has everything to do with how mathematics starts treating you. Somewhere around $50,000 to $80,000 in real liquid savings, not home equity, not a 401k you can't touch without a penalty, but actual accessible money. Something structural changes in your financial life. Before that number, money behaves like a drain. Every unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, a month of reduced hours, pulls you backward. You're not building, you're plugging holes. But once you cross that threshold, the same unexpected expense becomes an inconvenience instead of a catastrophe. That psychological difference is enormous and almost never discussed. Because here's the thing. The stress of financial fragility does not just make your life harder emotionally. Research consistently shows it actually impairs decision-making. When your brain is in a low-grade panic about money, it optimizes for the short term. It cannot afford to think long. So the people who need the best financial decisions the most are the ones least equipped to make them because the anxiety itself is eating up cognitive bandwidth. Crossing into genuine liquidity doesn't make you smart, it just frees up the intelligence you already had. The institutions barely notice you at this stage, but they do start to notice. A few banks change your fee structure quietly. A credit card company extends a slightly higher limit without you asking. These aren't gestures of respect, they're signals from a risk algorithm that you've moved out of a certain bracket. You haven't arrived anywhere, but you've left somewhere. And leaving that particular place, the place where one bad month undoes 6 good ones, is genuinely the most important financial move most Americans never talk about, because it doesn't photograph well. Nobody posts about their emergency fund on Instagram. The second shift, though, is where things get socially interesting and strange. Somewhere in the range of $500,000 to $1 million in net worth, you cross a line that is nearly invisible from the outside, but felt immediately by anyone who crosses it. If you're still with me and want to understand the full picture, consider subscribing, because this channel is built around exactly these kinds of conversations that most financial content skips over. Now, here's what actually happens at this level. The phone calls change, not the ones from friends, the ones from banks, advisors, and institutions. You stop being processed and start being managed. You get a name to call instead of a queue to sit in. You get offers that don't exist in any brochure because they're not meant for everyone. They're meant for you specifically, which is a sentence that has a very particular effect on the human brain. We are wired to respond to being seen. It is a deep, ancient need, and financial institutions have figured out that the most effective way to retain wealthy clients is not to give them the best rates, it's to make them feel recognized.
The product they're really selling at this tier is the sensation of mattering. But here is the part that makes this level genuinely complicated. The people in your personal life also start treating you differently, and unlike the bank, they often don't know they're doing it. A family member asks for your opinion on a decision they never would have consulted you on before. A friend who used to be an equal in everything starts slightly deferring to you in group conversations. It's subtle, but it accumulates. And what you discover, if you're paying attention, is that wealth doesn't just change how strangers see you, it slowly rearranges the social architecture of every room you walk into. Some of those changes feel good. Some of them are quietly isolating, because you start to wonder which parts of the relationship are about you and which parts are about the number. Consider a realistic American example here. A household in their early 40s, two incomes, maybe a combined $180,000 a year in a mid-cost city like Nashville or Denver. They've been disciplined. They have $600,000 between retirement account and some taxable investments, maybe $200,000 in home equity. On paper, they're doing exceptionally well compared to the median American household, but they don't feel wealthy because their neighbors just refinished their kitchen, their kids' school is expensive, and their cars are 6 years old. The number is real. The feeling is somewhere else entirely. That gap between what is financially true and what emotionally registers is one of the most consistent features of this second level, and it is not a personal failure. It is a documented psychological pattern called the hedonic treadmill, and at this tier, it is running at full speed. The third shift is the one people fantasize about, and it is also the one that comes with the strangest side effects. Somewhere above 3 million and more reliably above 5 million, something changes in your relationship to work, to risk, and to other people that has no clean financial explanation. At a 4% withdrawal rate, $3 million generates $120,000 a year indefinitely. For most American households, that number permanently replaces the need to earn income. But the behavioral change it produces is not about spending, it's about posture. When you genuinely do not need the next deal, the next job, the next approval, and the people around you can sense that, you carry yourself differently. Negotiations feel different. Conversations feel different. There is a calm that comes from optionality, and other people read that calm as confidence, competence, or authority, even when it has nothing to do with any of those things. It is simply the body language of someone who is not afraid of the outcome. The financial system at this level stops pretending to serve you and starts actually competing for you. Private banking relationships, access to investment opportunities that are legally restricted to accredited investors, introductions that only happen inside rooms that don't advertise their existence. And most people, when they imagine this level, imagine freedom. What they don't picture is the audit it performs on your relationships. Because once it becomes known, and it always becomes known, that you have real serious wealth, every relationship gets quietly re-examined by everyone in it, including you. You start asking questions you never had to ask before. Does this person like me, or do they like the possibility of me? Is this invitation genuine, or is it strategic? It is a lonely question to have to ask, and the more times you ask it, the more it changes you. Not always for the worse, but always in ways you didn't anticipate. Here is what I think is the most honest thing I can say about all three of these levels. Each of them represents a real change in how the world functions around you. The first buys you stability, the second buys you access, the third buys you independence, but none of them resolves the internal question, which is the one that was always the real question anyway. The research on this is consistent enough to be almost boring at this point. Beyond a certain income threshold, and in the United States, that number is somewhere around $100,000 to $120,000, depending on the study, additional wealth has almost no relationship to day-to-day emotional well-being. The comfort of not being financially fragile is enormous and real. Everything above that line is, to a remarkable degree, about identity, about what you want the number to say about you. And that is a story you get to write yourself, or you can let the culture write it for you, which it is very willing to do. If this conversation is useful to you, there is more like it here, and subscribing takes about 3 seconds. The cashier I mentioned at the beginning, she will eventually notice you differently, not because you changed, but because a number changed, and the number speaks first. The real work, the work that nobody puts in a thumbnail or a title because it doesn't drive clicks, is deciding in advance how much power you're going to give that number over how you feel about yourself. Because the people who seem to be at most peace at every level I've described are not the ones who arrived there fastest. They're the ones who somewhere along the way quietly decided what the money was for and then actually held that line when the world started offering them reasons to move it. So here's what I want to leave you with as a question worth sitting with. If you reached the level you're currently aiming for tomorrow, what specifically would you do differently? And is there anything stopping you from doing that right now?